Hello everyone, my name is Seth, and today I'm going to give you my review of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. First, I want to go ahead and say sorry for no video last week. I know I said I would try, but I was sick, and when I thought I was getting better, I ended up turning the corner and being more sick. And there's a lot of cold, flu stuff going around, so wash your hands, be safe. But that did give me time to reflect on Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. And I gotta say, there's something just special about animated Spider-Man. I grew up on the 90s animated TV show. I loved the Spectacular Spider-Man. I even liked Ultimate Spider-Man. I didn't love it like I have some of the other animated Spider-Man projects, but I still liked Ultimate Spider-Man with Drake Bell. I just love a lot of different versions of animated Spider-Man, and so when they announced this, I was super excited for it. I think it has a good idea and interesting visual style, and so I couldn't wait, and I watched it as soon as I could every time they released the episodes. But before we go any farther, go ahead and like this video, hit subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a video. We're getting closer and closer to 300 subscribers, so if you're new here, please consider subscribing. And if you're not new here, share this video with any friends or family. It can really help the channel grow, and it'd absolutely make my day. First, to give you a little bit of background on this, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man was originally going to be kind of an animated prequel to our MCU, the Tom Holland Spider-Man, but as development on that went along, they just decided it would be better creatively if they could just do this in an alternate universe, and that's what they ended up doing. I believe that ended up being a really good choice, even though I wanted more. I wanted that kind of prequel series for Tom Holland Spider-Man. But I did have to admit, especially after seeing this show, I think that choice was the best creatively. There's so many more things that they did here that they just couldn't have done if this was a prequel in the MCU in our universe that we know. But I would say that this Spider-Man does kind of have echoes of the Tom Holland Spider-Man. Some of the things are very familiar, but they just play out maybe a little bit differently. Like for one example, he doesn't really get to go to Midtown High in this show. Right at the beginning, Midtown High is damaged in a battle between Doctor Strange and this symbiote creature. And instead of coming home and meeting Tony Stark, he comes home and meets Norman Osborn. And it's even framed and shot, animated in the same exact way that we saw in Civil War. So there's definitely some similarities here. It's kind of almost like a parallel alternate universe. There's some echoes there of what we've seen before, but it just changes up things here and there, and I think that makes it a welcomed addition to a bunch of different Spider-Men. So even though there's a few things that seem familiar, seem like we've kind of seen something similar before, they do a great job of still making this seem fresh. Like, for example, we've had many of different versions of Norman Osborn over the years, but this in this show feels different. Him and Peter are interacting pretty much on a different level than we've really seen them before. And I really appreciate that. But the core of both characters, the core of Peter and the core of Norman Osborn, stays the same. You can tell that the core of what makes Norman Osborn is there. And that really goes for any of these other characters that we've seen before. Honestly, all throughout this show, I think one of the things they excelled with the most was with the characters. They did an incredible job of setting up characters and giving these different characters backstories. Like, they actually make you care about these characters and not just the main one or two. Honestly, in terms of like recognizable Spider-Man villains that he fights in this show, it's pretty much just Scorpion. They take their time, but they're setting up a lot. Norman in this show is kind of a mentor to Peter, but we all Spider-Man fans know that eventually Norman's going to be a problem. And we see Otto Octavius before he's Doc Ock. He plays a role in this show, but he's really just kind of creating inventions for some others, but the core of his character is still there. We see Rhino before he becomes the Rhino. I honestly really applaud these writers for the restraint that they show. It could have been very easy for them to just try to cram everything we know and love about Spider-Man into this one season, and that would have not really worked. And because they're not trying to cram a bunch of stuff, that means they really get to focus on these characters. And also because of that, I think the pacing, for the most part, throughout this whole season is really fantastic. I think maybe the only thing about this season could complain with, I guess maybe in terms of pacing or scale, would be that I don't necessarily think that this feels like a full season. It kind of feels like we're just getting started. Like this show was 10 episodes, but I feel like this whole kind of story could have been maybe 20 episodes. So this almost kind of feels like a mid-season finale to me. But I would say overall, that's not the biggest deal. But like I said, the time and the pacing they had gave us more time for character development, like what they did with Lonnie Lincoln in this season. Lonnie is another character who eventually turns into a Spider-Man villain, but in this, for the most part, he's just Peter's classmate and eventual friend. He doesn't go from Lonnie Lincoln friend to ruthless leader, Spider-Man villain Tombstone in this one season. And honestly, he might not even get there by the end of a second season. We get to know Lonnie, we get to care about him, and that's just going to make it hurt that much more when he and Spider-Man are eventually going to go at each other. But in this season, he's just such a likable character, and when we start to see him make some bad decisions, it really affects us. It hurts. We feel bad for him. So we know that eventual Spider-Man and Tombstone conflict will just be a giant emotional gut punch. And I think that's what really makes a successful show or a successful movie, is when you really care about these characters. What they did with all of these characters and the relationships they're building between the different characters is just so real, and is a definite strong point in this show. It's a big reason this show is so successful. The characters are incredibly likable. I really like Peter Parker here. It's just classic Peter, classic Spider-Man. I think Nico is a really interesting character. We just barely scratched the surface of kind of what's going on with her. I think she has a really nice relationship with Peter. And honestly, I know I've mentioned him a lot, but I can't say enough good things with what they did with Lonnie Lincoln in this season. They just do such a good job with these characters. You may or may not know. Some of them you may know. Some of you might not be as familiar with. But either way, they get you to really care about them. And they do this thing where sometimes they're doing new things with characters we already know, but it still feels familiar at the same time. I feel like the voice performances all throughout this season is really good. Hudson Thames plays Spider-Man, and he actually did the voice of Spider-Man in What If? But in this show, it seems like he really understands the character Spider-Man. He really understands the character of Peter Parker, and I think he's a great version of Spider-Man. If he can keep up his performance and the writers can keep up the writing, I think he might end up being some people's favorite version of Spider-Man. Coleman Domingo plays Norman Osborn, and he does a really, really good job. He has a great voice, and he adds a lot of layers to his performance. In this season, Norman doesn't really give us any giant red flags, but just through his performance alone, Coleman Domingo gives us some reason here and there maybe to question Norman's intentions just a bit. And honestly, I can't wait to see what he does with Norman as he goes full villain. Eugene Bird plays Lonnie, and he does a fantastic job as well. He's another major standout. He does such a great job of making him so likable, and he brings a lot of emotion and heart to this role. It's just really well acted all the way around. I think the action all throughout this is great. Again, you don't see a lot of the classic Spider-Man villains. Really, it's just Scorpion, but I think the action that they do have is a lot of fun. It's just classic Spider-Man action. It's honestly just as good as you would hope for in an animated Spider-Man project. As far as the animation goes, I don't really know how to feel even still. I love the idea of this. It's like classic 60s Spider-Man comics. And I love the character design. A lot of the character design is just ripped straight out of the 60s comics. It just has such a really cool aesthetic. I love the design of Doc Ock. The final spider suit that we see Peter wearing is awesome. I love the design of Daredevil in this. There's just a lot of really cool design choices that they take here. But sometimes I don't know. I just can't help but feel like sometimes it looks cheap to me, but sometimes I feel like the animation looks really good. It's really weird. I don't know. I just don't really know how to feel on the animation yet. But overall, I gotta say, I really enjoyed it. This was a really fun Spider-Man story. This show does have some parallels with things we've already seen and things we might feel comfortable with, but they make some really welcomed and interesting changes. The characters and their relationships with each other is really a strong point. The whole show really is just really well written. It's really well thought out, and the writers really understand these characters. This show has some fun Spider-Man action sequences, and we get to see Peter learn really what it means to be Spider-Man. The pacing is great for the most part. Again, like I said, the only issue is maybe it feels like half a season. Not to say that it doesn't actually have an ending to the season, it just overall kind of feels like half a season. The voice acting is great, and they do a lot of setting up in this where I'm super excited to see where they take it next. Not 100% sure how to feel about the animation style, but I really like the idea. But I would say that if you like Spider-Man, this show is definitely a must-watch. I honestly really loved this show, and I can't wait for next season. And they've already given it a second and a third season, so I'm definitely excited to see what they do next. But that's it. That's my review of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Have you seen this show? Let me know what you thought in the comment section down below. I'd love to have a conversation with you about it. And let me know what you think of the animation style too. Let me know if I'm just crazy or if I'm not alone. But thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a video. You can follow me on social media pretty much anywhere at CinemaSeth, and I'll see you next time.